Evie, your reaction to what we've heard so far, and do you have any unanswered questions that you're hoping they'll address?
I think they've addressed everything, and it's interesting. A couple of key things that stood out during the hearing is when Acting Director Rowe said that multiple employees have either left or they've been unassigned to work from home so that they're not part of the mix anymore. And when I hear multiple employees, to me, that's saying this is a systemic thing and a problem. This wasn't one person making a bad decision, but the whole system. The other thing he focused on was field offices. He's actually going to change the Office of Investigations to the Office of Field Operations. And what that means is the field offices that help support visits. So let's say President-elect Trump is going to Chicago. The Chicago field office will help support that visit. But what he's saying is they need to give proper training to these field offices, which again sends the message that the field offices out there that are supporting these advances don't have the proper training. And he also focused on training in general, which I have to tell you, I absolutely agree. Training is paramount, and it's something that is barely done because of the mission, because it's so busy, and because of this do more with less. And he actually talked about that. He actually pointed out this whole do more with less that has been going on for a very long time. And he said it, that has caused the deterioration of their protective operations and advances needs to change. You know, it was something to tell you that you were applauded if you were able to do more with less resources, do more with less manpower. It was seen as a positive thing. And what they're moving away from is saying that this obviously doesn't work.
And Rowe also has said complacency was to blame for a lot of these failures that day, and he vowed to hold the responsible employees accountable. I'm curious, Evie, I know you still have connections inside the Secret Service now that the dust has settled. What are you hearing from inside the agency, and how are changes being implemented and received?
Well, there's two different lanes. So the one lane is the agents themselves, and that's morale. And it's pretty tough right now. You come from an agency, the U.S. Secret Service, it's always seen with prestige and respect. And right now your agency is seen in such a negative light, especially for something like this that happened. Internally, they are making a lot of changes. But again, I have to tell you, it really comes from leadership. If you've got multiple employees making these mistakes, being complacent, it always comes from the top. And they should also, one thing I didn't hear is that they should really be looking at leadership and looking at the individuals who kind of put this system in place and maybe changing that. I think that's a really important thing.
I was thinking about the interesting moments we covered during Trump's first term in office, from his trip around Walter Reed when he was infected with COVID, to the reports that Trump lunged toward his security detail when they refused to take him to the Capitol on January 6th. And so as we're looking at his second term about to take place, what do you expect as he's going to pick the next Secret Service director? What might that relationship with the agency look like?
He might pick somebody from the outside. And that wouldn't be a bad thing. Or he might pick somebody who's been gone for a while. That also might not be a bad thing. But then if we look at the former director, she had been gone for a while. I think she was at Pepsi and then came back. So it might not be a bad thing to have somebody who's not part of the agency, not part of the culture, doesn't know anything, and who's really going to look at this from the outside and say, what are you doing? Because even the public, with a lot of what happened with the July 13th attempted assassination, a lot of these things were common sense, like how do you not secure the AGR building? And even here, when he was being interviewed during the hearing, one of the first questions he was asked was, what is the most glaring issue here? And Acting Director Rowe said, you know, it's how did you not secure that building? How did you not see that problem? He also touched on that they need to focus more on those middle perimeters, outer perimeters. And I have to say that is true. Usually Secret Service is so focused. As an agent, you're so focused on the inside because that's where the president's going, the president's moving. And that outer part, you tend to give it to local law enforcement. But then there's the issue of communication. Right. The agents did not communicate clearly to local law enforcement what was expected of them. And you really can't default to them and expect them to put the plan on their own or make assumptions.